My grandma had an elderly neighbor who lost her husband when she was very young, many decades ago. It was a sudden death, cardiac arrest or something like that. The woman was so upset because for a couple years after his death, she couldn't dream of her husband. For some reason, it really bothered her that she couldn't experience a dream with him in it. It's almost like she wanted it for the comfort. In the months after, she'd hear horrible screeching and scratching noises emanating from the basement. Every time she'd go down to check, the noise would stop, but there'd be fresh claw marks embedded in the ceiling. The timing was so spot on with her husband's passing, she knew it must have been him. Sometimes in the night, her bed would violently shake her awake. She'd jump out of bed, but then, abruptly, the bed would stop moving. Some mornings she'd awake to find the house trashed, furniture moved, and knickknacks knocked over and toppled, but no items would be missing. Some time passes, and the woman is preparing to sell her house and move closer to her children. Suddenly, she gets her wish and finds a buyer. She starts to have dreams again, and her husband is in them. She has many of these dreams, every single night, and in every one, her husband wakes her up, sits her down on the bed, and starts speaking to her. However, his speech horrified her. It was described as backwards or jumbled. It was eerie and frustrating as she couldn't make out a single word he said. A few days before she's about to move out for good, she goes to bed and dreams of him again. The dream is the same, except this time she can understand a word amongst the mess of jumbled speech. He grabs her in the dream and repeatedly says, "Rafters, rafters," almost in a panicked state. She wakes up rattled, but returns to sleep thereafter. The next day, as she finishes up packing in the basement, she looks up and sees the rafters. She remembers the dream and is compelled to reach into them. She moves her hand over the support beam, feeling around as she slowly walks under it. She can feel something grab hold of her arm, and despite her shock, it felt loving and guiding. The force moves her hand back along the other side of the beam, where she finds a trove of old war bonds. Her husband never told her about the bonds, and since the discovery, she's never experienced his ghost again. She's hopeful about her husband's peace now, comforted knowing why his spirit was driven to haunting her. The bonds sold for a hefty price, taking care of not only her needs, but the needs of her children too. Her husband knew that it was past his time, but wanted his descendants, the parts of him that can still be allowed to live, to know what he left behind.